Amos, who's the school director of a new school, new in more ways than one in its approach also, called Panyaden in Chiangmai. So Neil.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Right, good. I'm going to turn on my computer. I am the director at Panyaden School, a new school in Chiangmai. And this week I've been thinking what I should talk about here today. And I thought, well, some people might be interested in a primary school, and some people might not be interested. So I thought, well, this is something which possibly might interest all of us, or unite all of us, something common to all of us, which I can relate to our school, but also everyone in the room might relate to. So I've chosen to talk about values, common values, values which we think are worth preserving, values which we think are maybe are being lost, and some of these are reflected at our school because we're trying to do things a slightly different way to a lot of other schools in terms of keeping certain values in place or preserving values we're losing, or maintaining new values which we think are important. So I'll start by just giving you a story about something which I think illustrates my point. 1 second. Oh, actually, no. Before I do that, before I do my story, there's me. My name's Neil Amos. I'm from Northampton in the UK, which is a place most people drive straight past, with good reason, actually. It's a small town in the middle of the UK, and I've been coming to Thailand since 1989. I spent 9 years here, running an English school for a while, and working in refugee camps in southern Thailand. And I lived in Bangkok for a while, and then back to London for the last 10 years. I was working at a university there for a while, and I was a governor at a primary school in London. Then my family and I decided to come back here. My wife is from Thailand, and we have 2 daughters, 5 and 7. And we wanted them to spend some time growing up here to learn the culture, the language, because they're half Thai, of course. So we came to Chiang Mai. First thing we wanted to do was find a school, and Panyaden School wasn't actually open at that time. So they're now coming to Panyaden School, and yeah, they're very happy there, but I would say that, of course. So that's me. Panyaden School is brand new. It's in near Hang Dong, and I won't tell you too much about it because I think the presentation will probably illustrate the school better than I can do right now. Back to my story. I went to a small school in a village in Northamptonshire called Hardingstone County Primary School, and I've got very happy memories of that school. Mainly playing outside, playing field, doing arts and crafts, a really funny teacher who told really great stories, blah blah blah. I mean, I had good memories of my childhood at primary school. Then about 4 or 5, maybe less than that, maybe 3 years ago, I drove back past my primary school, and it looked something like this. Actually, that's not my primary school, but imagine it's my primary school. I couldn't find a picture of it. A huge fence all the way around it, which never used to be there. And I thought to myself, why is that fence there? It's a tall fence. In fact, it's got these curly tops, so you really can't get in. I started thinking about values and how they've changed over the years, and what this fence possibly represents in terms of change. So, I don't want to actually just talk and talk and talk, so I thought maybe, if you're okay with it, I'd like to ask you to spend 3 minutes on your table, talking about values you think are worth preserving, values you think are losing, and maybe the difference between values here in Thailand and where you're from back home. And maybe just have a quick conversation, if you don't mind, for a few minutes, just talking about, well, what do you think is worth preserving, and what are we losing? And how can we learn from what's happening here, and how can people here learn from what's happening back home? So if you don't mind, just a couple of structured buildings, but very economical and very environmentally friendly. All the bamboo we've used is being replanted, so we're replenishing all the bamboo stock that we've used. We use a lot of recycled wood, and our buildings have recycled wood around all the window frames and so forth. So we're trying to show kids that if you're in an environment where we respect the environment, then we recycle everything, we separate all our garbage, then they will learn from an early age that this is important, that if we care for nature around us, it will care for us. This is a wastewater treatment area in the school. So all the water we use is treated and then returned to irrigate the land. We also recycle and treat all our waste food and turn it into biogas. And actually need a lot of waste food to produce biogas, so it's a small project, but hopefully over time it will produce enough biogas to keep the school going. So we have a vegetable patch to grow our own vegetables, again in small scale, but again it gives the principle and the value to kids about the environment. Something else which I was constantly reminded of when I was young was how lucky I've been that I didn't grow up in the war. And my parents and grandparents all went through rationing. Right, and those of you from Europe will know, I'm sure very well, that rationing was a huge feature of the post-war period and the war period in Europe. And I always remember my mother darning socks when I was a kid. She was always darning socks and fixing stuff. And this was actually probably after the time when she needed to darn socks, because already in Marks and Spencer's, our local retail shop, you could buy them pretty cheaply. But because she'd grown up in that era where you really had to be self-sufficient as much as possible, then she had learned the skill, and she did it. And not only was the skill of darning socks means you preserve your socks, you save some money, but actually it's a very good way to concentrate, to persevere, and again there's lots of skills I think you learn in this kind of endeavour. So I think that hasn't been lost in Thailand. A lot of people still don't have enough money to be able to go and replace everything once they buy it, so you still see people doing this. But I think more and more we tend to buy, use, throw away, buy again, because things are cheap and available. And I do it myself. I'm not a great model example of self-sufficiency, but I do think that the more we can encourage our children to be self-sufficient. They may not be self-sufficient when they're older, they may not live on a farm and grow their own food, but they learn those skills and they appreciate the value, I think, of the things that we consume each day. And I think that's the key thing, to learn the value of food, where it comes from, of clothing and where that comes from. Because obviously we're living in an environment now where everything is very available and very easy. And the more we appreciate the value and stand still a little bit, I think that's a positive step. Okay, going back to your points about respecting the outdoors, playing outside, exploring things. I don't know if anybody here has ever climbed a tree and fallen off it and hurt themselves. Yeah? Recently? We encourage kids to get up on trees, we encourage kids to climb, to fall off. We don't actually say please fall off, but you know, we encourage them to explore and explore their own limits, to play outdoors. And that's something I grew up doing, was playing outdoors all the time. I was always outdoors. And I know back home now, less and less people play outside, outdoors, in the street, and so forth. I know that in Thailand, in a lot of schools in Thailand, kids rarely seem to go outside. Break time is in the classroom, lunchtime is in the classroom. My daughters went to one school with a lovely swimming pool, and it was never used. It really was, they went swimming once in 5 months or something like that, because it seemed to be too cold at that time of the year or whatever reason. So I think if we stop doing that, we stop going outdoors, we start exploring, stop climbing trees, stop using the swimming pool, then obviously in terms of our fitness, our immune system, and there's so many allergies around these days, these all begin to lower. And also we stop learning about exploring our limits, learning by mistakes. If we wrap our children up in cotton wool and stop them from hurting themselves, then I think they will become less tough and rigorous and strong as they get older. So we're very much a fan of letting kids fall over, graze their knees, play outside, climb trees, etc. Okay, I seem to have lost this one. Where's it gone? There we go. Okay, this is a swing at school. That's one of our teachers taking cover. And a couple of our own teachers actually said, do you think this is a good idea? We're pushing these kids right on the swing. They said, come on, push me, teacher Neil, push me. So we go up and give them a big push. And they came really hard actually, and even myself I was thinking, did I push them too hard that time? And so we had a chat with the teachers about this recently, and some of them were actually quite concerned that if you really push these kids really hard, it's actually quite dangerous. But our head teacher, pointed out that if they know how to hold onto the ropes, if they've got the skills and the development to hold onto the ropes and they're strong, that's okay. And they will tell you if you're pushing them too hard anyway. So if they can hold onto the swing, then they can go really high. I used to go really high as I possibly could when I was a kid. So again, I think if we explore our limits and get outside, then that's a great thing for kids. Some of these are not really values as such, but I'm kind of bending the rules a little bit about values. Also, we really emphasize exploring by experience, by doing, finding out stuff, because we learn better by actually experiencing. So as our colleague mentioned over here, sitting down, memorizing, over and over again repeating, is not the best way to learn. It's one way to learn. But actually, if we do something ourselves, we work it out for ourselves, we generally remember it better. If we learn how to fix something ourselves, or we find out, we look at a bug through a magnifying glass, see its legs and so forth, then we learn all about the body parts. Much better than if we see it on a projector on a screen. Because we remember that image, very real image, and it's a much better way of education. So we always encourage our kids to learn by doing, by finding things out for themselves. We've got test crazy in the UK now. It seems like every 5 minutes is a test. And the government regulates all the schools, and they have to pass exams, and they have to pass tests, and then when you're 3 you have a test, and when you're 7 you have a test, and it goes on and on and on all the way through school. And it really is a big issue now, and a lot of parents are complaining that their kids are just on this academic path without much time for the other aspects of your development, your moral development, your emotional development, your physical development. It's just intellectual development. In Thailand, unfortunately, we seem to be following the same trend, rather like in Japan now. And someone told me recently there's an academic kindergarten in Bangkok. They promote themselves as being an academic kindergarten. Now for me, that doesn't seem to be the right age to be pushing academic progress between the ages of 2 and 5, right? That is an age where you should be having fun and learning a little bit and having fun, a bit of free play, exploring for yourself, not studying to read and write, doing homework and memorizing and so forth. So, and spelling tests and so forth, they are the norm over here, it seems. And I'm just not convinced that is the right way to encourage our children to enjoy learning. Because we always learn better when we're enjoying it, when we're relaxed, and when the environment is conducive to that. So yeah, we've gone test crazy, and it's quite a common story I hear now where a child will get up at 7 or so forth, go to school, start at 8 o'clock, study all day, writing, reading, so forth, get home, or actually before they get home they go to an after-school club, additional maths for example, get home, do homework until 9 o'clock, go to bed. And these are kids, you know, these could be 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids. And I'm not convinced that is the right way to push our young people, personally. I think there's a real need to have free time to intersperse learning with other kinds of activities. So I'm concerned that if we just push the academic only, and of course we have to push the academic, then we lose the other important things of our children's development. Like I said, the emotional, the moral, the physical development. So we have fun at our school, and we try to make lessons lively, and here this is what we call language doctors, and then we have the girl on the right, she's bilingual, she speaks fluent English, the boy on the left is Thai, and they exchange English and Thai words. It's a bilingual school, and they call it language doctor, and it's a bit of fun, and they have a lot of fun, but they also learn while they're doing it. So that's our approach to encouraging people to enjoy learning. So, so that's it really. I don't really have an awful lot more to say. Here's a quote from an advisor to our school who's actually a British monk who's been in Thailand for 35 years. He's completely bilingual, and he has an interest in education, Buddhism and education particularly. And this is a quote from him. He comes and does talks at our school every now and again, and he's a very inspiring person to listen to. Teaching children how to learn, how to enjoy learning, to love wisdom for its own sake. I think that is at the heart of what education should be. So, in terms of those values we all talked about, I personally think what we're doing at our school, it's a long-term project, it may be ambitious, it may not work. It may work, I sincerely hope it does, because we're all committed to it. But I do think that some values are worth preserving, renewing and maintaining. And I think if we do that, then the future generation of leaders, of important people and influential people will be much more responsible and better rounded than the way we're going right now. So that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Neil.
And our limits are going to be pretty small. So within each classroom we do differentiation, which is basically meaning that if one group of children are more competent than others, or they're slower at one language than another, then we set them individual challenges. So we tailor our teaching towards the needs of each student. I think I hope that answers your question. So we're very much aware of the fact that not everyone is at the same level, and it's not one size fits all. So children have grown up in a single language family, yes. We, from the age 2 to 5, we pretty much focus on verbal skills, so we don't introduce reading and writing until they get a little bit older. In each classroom we have 2 teachers. If you have a child that enters that age, quite a young age, one thing that we always find is that kids are like sponges when they're young, in terms of picking up languages. However, rather just throw them in and say, right, sink or swim, which I think there is some merit in doing that, to be honest with you, because immersion can be quite helpful. We provide additional support to a child who comes in, and we've had a few who only speak English, for example, or only speak Thai. So because we have 2 teachers in each classroom, one of each language, if the lesson is being conducted in Thai at that particular point, then the English-speaking teacher would sit with that child and help them along, translating where necessary, not everything, because then the child doesn't actually try to learn a new language. So, so it's not generally a problem. Usually, I think for the first few weeks, the child struggles, to be honest. Yeah, you know, when you're thrown into a situation where you only speak language, it's hard. But I think that's okay, actually, as long as they're not unhappy. They may be struggling with the language, but if they're happy in the classroom and they're getting support and attention from the second teacher, then that's okay, because learning is not always easy, right? But no, we always make sure that they are comfortable and have that extra support. So you find my daughter's a great example. She came here And to be honest, she grew up in London and even started having a bit of a London accent. And she came here, and even though her mum is Thai, she spoke no Thai at all. English became her default language, which actually was a mistake in retrospect. However, she came here and 6-8 months ago and spoke no Thai at all. And now she speaks, not fluently, but she speaks very well. And she has pretty much been immersed in it, but with extra help from those teachers. It's largely subjective in terms of some of those values, right? So we have a number of ways of evaluating our children. Some of those are academic indicators, so what level this person speaks Thai or English, just as they would do in any school. But we're also measuring, actually we have a list of 9 values or attributes, including perseverance and patience and respect and kindness and all those kind of things. And we are sort of scoring those, if you like, as the child goes along. So yeah, it is quite intangible. And I think the only way to really make sure we're all singing from the same hymn book and we're all scoring them roughly the same way is that we also, as teachers, embody those values. So we very much try to lead by example and to have those values ourselves. But it is quite subjective, of course. So we sort of every 6 months we will say, okay, in terms of your patience, has that increased over the last 6 months? And the child will also reflect on that themselves as well as the teacher. And we also speak with their parents to see if they've become more patient at home. Are they tidying their room now more than often? So we kind of do it in that kind of manner. So you have that alongside the more academic indicators. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Interview parents. It's not like a formal interview. We first have a registration process with them. We make it very clear about what to expect at our school. So if you are expecting reams of homework every night, or you're expecting your child to stay in the classroom and not go out and play, then this probably isn't the school for you. So that's the first point. So we generally have parents who want to be there because they like our approach. That's the first thing. Having said that, there are still parents who have concerns. I mean, one concern is my daughter doesn't get enough homework, and she does get homework, but she thinks she should be getting more homework. And actually, I'm pretty sure, I don't know about anybody else in this room, but I'm pretty sure I didn't get homework in primary school. I didn't get homework until I got to secondary school. Now, I'm not sure if anyone else remembers or agrees with that. But so we're not light on homework. We do set homework every week, but we're not going to throw books and books at parents. And essentially, the job is also about encouraging parents to see things slightly differently. And I think you're right. Some parents will just say, no, we don't agree. We think our parents should be having spelling tests every Friday, or they should not be getting swimming, or so forth. Well, at the end of the day, I'm sorry, but that's how we do things, and we think this is much more valuable for children to have some free time to play as well as learn, and that's how they learn better. So we try to convince parents this is the best approach for their child, and not all of them agree with it. In terms of homework, we give home activities to do with their parents rather than, again, copying things out of a book. So, for example, my daughter came home with a homework recently which is about researching climate in her own country, in the UK, which was a great academic piece of work, but for me it was really interesting because I could talk about England and she could talk to me about it, and we explored it together, we talked about it together, and it was really informative for her because she learnt about climate. But it was a fun activity and it was interesting for her, so we try to do that. So it's I think it's a long-term battle, a long-term project, and it will take some time, I'm sure, for people to think, yeah, I want to send my kids here. We've got quite a few pioneers the first year, but I wonder whether it will take another year or so before people start thinking, yeah, this is actually a better way than what's happening now. We'll see.